Welcome to the C-Suite Mentor, the place where you will learn the tools, strategies, and mindset to scale your business sustainably and build a lasting legacy. I'm your host, Theresa Cantley. As a fellow CEO, I understand what it takes to scale a business to 7 and multiple 8 figures. It's not necessarily what you might think. It requires a complete shift in how you think, strategize, and execute key actions in your business. My mission is to help CEOs step back into the driver's seat of their business by optimizing their operations, empowering their team, and staying in total alignment with their big vision. So, are you ready to exchange everything that hasn't worked for strategies that will? You're in the right place, so let's go. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the C-Suite Mentor Podcast. I am your host, Theresa Cantley, and we have a very special guest today who is joining us here live. I'm super excited to have her here and to talk about, it's a little bit of a different topic. We do talk about leadership. We talk about building businesses. We talk about, building a healthy culture in your business. And we're coming at it from a bit of a different spin today because we're talking, it's really a blend between what happens in our personal life and what happens in business, and how the two, because really it's all life, and how they end up intersecting when something impacts it, and specifically as it relates to divorce. I am divorced, actually, and I can speak directly to this topic about how it impacts what happens in your day-to-day when you have to go back and you have to make a living and you have to, continue to do all the things at the same time you're trying to navigate what's happening outside in life. So I am super excited to have my guest, Rhonda Noordyk, here. Rhonda is you're a lawyer, right?
I'm actually a certified divorce financial analyst.
There we go. Okay. I was like, no, she's not a lawyer. I'm like reading this here. I met Rhonda at an event back in the fall with someone who we both know and we're both connected to. Jamar Jones, we'll just call you out here online on this episode. And I met Rhonda and we were chatting about leadership and about what Rhonda does. And I just, she had sent me a message and said, hey, like I have this, this thing that I've been talking about and I've been sharing, and, I think it would definitely be beneficial. So here she is. Thank you for joining us, Rhonda.
Oh my gosh, Theresa, thank you so much for having me. I am happy to be here.
So Rhonda is a nationally, and if I would have read my notes here, Rhonda is a nationally recognized certified divorce financial analyst and passionate advocate for women navigating divorce, which is so important. Rhonda is the founder of the Women's Financial Wellness Center and the host of the top-rated podcast, Disrupting Divorce: Conversations for Women. I think that's why I was like, in my brain, I was like, she's a lawyer. Might as well be. So anyway, Rhonda, tell us a little bit about, like, one of the things I love to hear about are people's stories. So tell us a little bit about your story, how you got started and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I have been doing this particular work for the last 11 years. Prior to that, I had been in the financial industry in more of a traditional type role, ran a successful registered investment advisory firm, doing financial planning for clients. I also was an adjunct faculty in higher education. I was there for 15 years. I started in my mid-20s. It was one of the best things I ever did. Loved being able to teach. And so 11 years ago, when I started my business, part of the reason I started it was because I had people coming through my doors and they're like, Rhonda, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I feel unsettled because I'm working and I don't feel like I can be committed 100% because I've got all these other things that are going on in my personal life. I feel like this is an open purse. And I remember somebody saying to me, Rhonda, not only have I been working for the same company for 25 years, I've been married to the same person for 25 years, and I've been living in the same house for 25, like literally the last 25 years of my life have been exactly the same. And she said, and now I have had to get a part-time job. I'm like moonlighting at this other job to try to pay for the legal fees. She says, I've got a giant amount of guilt because I love my full-time job, but I still have all these other obligations. I'm feeling unsettled about the attorney bills that are coming in, and they're just running. There's got to be a better way. And I remember thinking, you're right, there does have to be a better way. And so those were some of the seeds that got planted. And eventually I decided I'm going to go all in on serving women that are going through divorce. So that's essentially kind of how this whole thing started. And then as I was working, I really found that it was not only in Wisconsin or in the Midwest, of course, right? The issues were the same, different
Yeah.
driveway, same issues across the country. So when I launched my podcast called Disrupting Divorce, about 7 years ago, I had women reaching out from all over. Rhonda, I'm in Texas, I'm in California, I'm in New York. Can you help me? And I said, yeah, I can. And so we really started on this mission. And quite frankly, like I'm living my dream in a sense of I wanted to be known as that go-to person that could advocate for women that were going through divorce. And so along that journey, I also found that there was a lot of the clients I was working with that were really feeling torn around, trying to balance all of the things that were going on in their personal life and in their business. And I think a lot of times it's, hey, leave that stuff at the door. We got a job to do. But there's so much more to that. And I really, now this second, iteration of my business after 11 years, right, we're like, okay, what's next? And the what's next is getting the word out about the impacts that divorce is having on workplace productivity. And I've got some really important story to share when we get to that point of an example of how detrimental this can be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so important, just with different things that have happened just globally, and in our country, it's so important to have someone who is there, who you can go to, who can help you when you're navigating, I mean, really any challenge, but specifically like because divorce just impacts, especially when there's kids involved and, it just impacts so much. And like I said, being somebody who's been through it, the mental stuff that you end up going through, the emotional, and then how that you're trying to continue to have things keep going and try and have some kind of like whatever normal is, and you're trying to navigate this and it just becomes really hard. So having someone that is going to advocate for you and having someone that can help you to navigate all of these things. And especially, I mean, right now with all of the ups and downs of the economy and the ups and downs of, finances and costs rising, when you're going through a divorce, it's like, I can't tell you how beneficial it is to have somebody on your side to help you. So, I mean, that's amazing work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. It's, I've always told people, right, like at the end of the day, this isn't the easiest career path, but I love doing it because we're making a difference and we're seeing it. I mean, early on, when I would have people come and say, Ron, I'm struggling. I don't know can I stay at my job? Can I not? What does this look like? And so I did have a couple companies that hired me privately to work with their clients or their employees. They became my client. And what helped with that was the women had a structured period of time in which they knew they were dealing with this issue. So if we were meeting once a week, let's say they knew, hey, I'm going to keep my list of questions. They could start to begin to compartmentalize. Otherwise, what ends up all of these thoughts, right? And, in the 90s, of course, right? Like I started the workforce in the 90s.
Me too.
Right? Like you had these situations, right? Like where people would be like, okay, can you please tell your husband or your partner or whomever, quit calling the reception desk because we're done patching them through. Those days are gone. So there is no buffer for these women. Now, you might say there might be people that are listening, Rhonda, what about the guys? And I just want to acknowledge that because, yes, guys need help too. But from my experience, the guys handle stuff in a very different way. First of all, they're much better at compartmentalizing what's going on. They are better at leaving it at the door, putting it in a box and setting it over here, right? Women, we're not like that as much.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not,
No.
it's just the reality. Like, women are going to want that support network. They are going to want to have those conversations. One of my friends had gone through divorce, and he worked in the EAP space. So he was in the military, he did health and wellness, and then he was part of the employee assistance program. And that's where I met him. And he said, Rhonda, when I was going through divorce, none of my colleagues knew, not one person. And 3 years after, we're going to an event, and I brought my girlfriend, and they were all like, they were all confused because nobody knew. These guys are not talking about it in most circles. And so, I just have said, listen, I know for me personally, I want to be the one who's helping the women. I'm not saying the men don't need help. And certainly, there are some resources available to be able to help them as well. But this is where I've planted my flag. And we've been able to have a lot of impact in this space. So really, really excited to just continue to get the word out about. I think leaders oftentimes are like, Rhonda, I don't know what to say. I don't know. I don't want to get in their business. I don't know what to say. And sometimes I think it's as simple as, how are you today?
Mm-hmm. It's just seeing people. Yeah.
It seems like something's, hey, are you okay? Do you need to talk? Just giving them that space to be able to have those conversations, I think is really important. And for the work that I've done with these employees as they were going through, there were a couple really positive things that came out of it. One, the women felt heard, seen, supported. Two, they didn't have to be hiding in their cubicle to talk to me because they had already gotten the go-ahead and the support from their employer.
Yeah.
And number two, they realized what they would need financially to be able to stay there. And what I mean by that is, this was just so amazing. This was probably very early on in my career, but this is what fueled me to be able to say, this is possible, right? So if we look at, and you probably know more about all the details of this than I do, but retention rates and turnover rates and having to retrain, right?
Yep.
So this particular gal was like, Rhonda, I'm saying, looking at your budget, you need about an extra, probably $2 an hour raise to be able to satisfy your budget. And that included already accounting for support that she was getting, all of those things. And so I said, I think it's worth going back and having that conversation. You love your job. They love having you there. So she went back and they said, yeah, we'll give you a raise because we appreciate you. B, we don't want you to leave. And, and so now they've been able to retain talent and talk about the loyalty. She was so grateful to them. And again, it still was less expensive for them to their bottom line. And the other thing, Theresa, that they said is, you know what? We've actually noticed that you're not the same person. Like, you're more confident. And I love that because, again, those are the kind of those intangible pieces and transformations that I'm seeing. So you're going to have more engaged employees. You're going to have people that feel valued. I don't know how we put a price tag on that.
Well, yeah, and you can. I mean, when you can, and you can't teach confidence. It's something that has to come from within someone. Change happens, growth happens. Either something comes into or something comes from within. And it's not something like confidence comes from something new coming from within someone. Something opens up, something breaks open, something based on something that they've navigated, based on a challenge that they've gotten through. And I mean, yeah, for companies, and it's something that I talk to leaders about all the time, just seeing someone and giving them that space so that they can be heard, that they can say what they need to say, that they know that what they're saying is valuable. I mean, that's it's worth so much. And it takes such a little bit of, time and a little bit of effort to give someone that space and hold that space for them. And I think, I mean, yeah, to your point, when you can teach someone something like what you do, and you can work with someone where they can then take control over, they can have agency over a part of their life that they felt like before they couldn't. I mean, that's priceless.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
absolutely.
Definitely. So tell me a little bit, because you said you had a story that you wanted to share as it relates to all of this. So let's just jump in and let's hear it.
Yeah. So I'm going to preface this by, so there was a case study, And this was done in the early 2000s. And people might be saying, well, Rhonda, doesn't apply. From my experience, the data is still very similar from what I'm experiencing from the work that I'm doing with my clients. So it was a marriage and family study. And basically what they were looking at was exactly this, the impact of divorce on workplace productivity. And so what they found was that for the employee themselves, there was usually a reduction in about 50 to 70% of productivity. And that just hit me like,
Hmm.
okay, if they're there 40, it's 20 at best of productive hours, right? But then there's this ripple effect. And so then for the colleagues that they're working with, it's usually about a 5 to 7% impact on their daily productivity, because whether they're picking up the slack or they're feeling frustrated or they're venting about the fact that so and so's leaving early or whatever is
Yeah.
going on. But then the leadership is at a 2% impact. And I think, Theresa, this is where the issue is. The issue is that leaders are, and it's just the nature of how it is, they're removed from the impact that this stuff is having on the organization. They're removed from seeing and experiencing what's going on or being in tune to it or aware of it, right? Because they've got their own responsibilities. So I sat at my desk one day and I'm doing this case study and I'm going through this calculation and I'm like, okay, if somebody's making, let's say, 100 grand and the impact to them is 50 and then the impact to, their colleagues is this percentage and then leadership, I'm like, holy cow. I mean, the dollar amount was absolutely astronomical. And then if it's 1 out of every 10 people and you've got 100 people in your organization, statistically, you'd have about 10 people. And so you multiply that by 10, you're like, holy cow. Like this
Yeah.
is the silent productivity, Now you could say, well, Ron, it's not just divorce. I totally understand that. This is one of the many major life changes on the Holmes Race scale. Okay. But it's at the top.
Well, and it also doesn't have to be a life change. It can also be, I mean, just with what just happened with, I mean, I'm not a political person, but just with what happened with the whole Charlie Kirk and, I mean, it impacts people.
Yeah.
And then the ripple effect of, the division that happens and then how that impacts people. And I mean, it can be anything, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And so all of those kind of things I think are super impactful. And people are not feeling seen because the people that are kind of in those leadership roles,
Mhm.
right, are so far removed. So that takes us to my client story. So I'm working with a woman who husband had been a higher income earner as they were going through the divorce process. And we kind of talked through it and she got advice from her attorney. She decided to go back to work. So she goes back to work and is working in a nonprofit and is making, 90 grand a year, which in Texas isn't a bad income for just kind of
No.
getting back into the workforce. Her daughter was early teenage years. And so it was like, hey, you've been out of the workforce for how long? And you can bop it. It was awesome. Like we were celebrating the win for her, right? Because she was now starting to have some autonomy and being able to grow. So they told her originally that this job would take about a year to kind of really get her arms around all the pieces because there were many moving parts. So she's going through divorce, high conflict. Soon to be ex is doing those things we were talking about: emailing, texting, heckling, all the things, making it very difficult as it relates to their daughter. There was just a lot of stress that was going into it.
Sure.
So long story short, I had asked her to be part of this focus group that we were doing on this topic. And I said, hey, would you mind just sharing with some of these other professionals that I'm working with what you're experiencing as you're going through divorce, having to get back into the job market? What are some challenges? What do you wish that they were more aware of? Whatever. So we hop on to this live call, Teresa, and all of a sudden she goes, hey, Rhonda. And there's like 9 other professionals, EAP professionals, therapists, attorneys, corporate leaders. And she says, hey, I haven't had a chance to talk to you yet, but I got let go this morning. And she'd worked there for 6 months.
Wow.
And I said, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Tell us a little bit more about what happened. So she starts to tell us that basically she had went to her boss, had shared some concerns about like, hey, I know that I'm maybe not being as productive as I can be. I'm looking for some additional support or help, whatever. And rather than them helping her, they basically reached out to the main supervisor, who then came into the office and basically said, hey, sorry, but we're letting you go. But here's the thing. So 6 months in, She now, all of the support, child support and alimony, had been negotiated based on her working. So now she has no money coming in of her own. The calculations are outdated. Nobody was really willing to rerun them. But here's the worst part. So we get through that, and I'm like distraught because she had done this in such a quick fashion. Her attorney said, yeah, go ahead and move forward with this next part I'm going to mention. And I was like, oh my gosh, you should have reached out to me because holy cow. So the organization that she was working for then reached out to her and said, hey, we're going to ask that you sign this document and we're going to pay you 10 grand to basically promise that you're not going to come back and sue us.
After they let her go.
So they recognized that there was some exposed risk that they had for letting her go.
Please tell me she didn't sign the document.
She signed the document and she took the check. Now, that would not have been my suggestion.
Wow.
But I didn't know about it till after it had happened because it happened so fast and she didn't reach. And again, we have to remember, people in these spaces, they are not necessarily thinking clearly. She was feeling pressured. Her attorney said, oh, yeah, you can take it. I'm like, I'm not exactly sure why he said that. 10 grand is a drop in the bucket. And there was just so much more to it, right? I don't know if in all the times that I've been advocating around this conversation about the impact of divorce on workplace productivity, that is when the apps, I did not even have any words. I was so upset. And
that's mind blowing. And it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing that the lawyer told her to sign it. Like, oh my gosh.
It's awful all the way around. And the key thing is like, okay, are they thinking, well, what's the harm? She's going to get 10 more grand, right? Oh, good. She can pay part of her legal. I mean, I don't know what's going on through the mind, but it was not a good scenario. And there's a better way. So now you have somebody who is literally struggling to get by, has should not be in a struggle mode. Like,
no,
struggling. And so there's just a better way. I don't know how else to say it except like, I feel like as leaders, right, we have an opportunity and one could even argue a responsibility to make sure that we're leading from a position of empathy, strength, helping our, and again, there's always a boundary around that. But they never gave her an opportunity to improve if there was an issue. Nobody talked to her about her performance. She was the one who was kind of saying, hey, I feel like I might need a little bit more, whatever. And they weren't hearing her.
Well, it wasn't even that. They weren't hearing her at all. But even beyond that, and unfortunately, there are a lot of leaders, a lot of business owners that do this where they know the situation and they take advantage of it. They know the situation and they count on the fact that someone either is in a high emotional state because of the situation that they're in, or because they are, especially if you are a giver, if you are someone who, and I was there with my boss back in the day when I was divorced, because I was the nice one. I was a director and I was the one that was nice. I was the one that would always help out. I was the one that would always, offer to raise my hand and do something. And I was also the one that got taken advantage of. Sexual harassment, hostile workplace. I mean, you name it. And unfortunately, and it's something that I fight against now, teaching leaders how to be an empathetic leader, teaching leaders about seeing people, about recognizing that, people are we're human and, people are different, and understanding where individuals' strengths are. And when someone needs like some guidance, or when like you need to hold space for those people. And I think to your point, a lot of leaders, there are people out there who in leadership roles who don't do that. And it's unfortunate. And it's definitely something that we need to, like I said, I fight against it all the time. to make sure that not, I shouldn't say fight against, like I am a stand for, building like helping people to become empathetic leaders, to helping people to have intellectual humility and to be able to see people and and see them for them, for the unique individual that they are.
Yeah.
So
I mean, and I know it's like, it's one of those things where, again, like, unless we've either gone through it or we have a conversation or we become aware of it, I think a lot of times the leaders aren't necessarily purposefully wanting to, not be engaged or empathetic. They either don't have the awareness, they don't know
mhm,
how. I mean, and I've heard that from, a lot of the leaders that I end up chatting with. It's like, I just don't know how to deal with it, Rhonda. I don't want to say the wrong thing, and so I say nothing. And I think we just sometimes overcomplicate it. It's just a matter of
mhm,
like, how are you today?
yeah,
I mean, it was interesting because I was kind of reflecting back on, I had done a presentation in person probably back in, I don't even know, 2018. And when we were doing more of those, and it was for
yeah,
the Rotary Club. And so there was a good amount of people there, and I was talking about this topic. And I remember hearing some muddlings as I'm kind of like, just networking and chatting with people before we officially get started. And we had passed out some information for them to take notes. And a couple of the people were like, yeah, well, I've been married for 25 years and this doesn't apply to me. And, this is person, whatever, like all these little kind of rumblings. And I thought, oh, this is awesome. We're just gonna, kick this off. So we get up there and I said, hey, listen, I said, I just want to acknowledge that I know that some of you might think that this doesn't apply to you, but you're part of Rotary because you're leaders in the community. So whether or not you like it, this applies to you. And
mm,
you might not be going through divorce and you might be happily married, but you're going to have people in your community, in your organization, in your company that are going through this. And thankfully, I'm like a seasoned enough speaker that I can change stuff on the fly. So I was like, no, because otherwise, right? You're like, no, we're just going to acknowledge up front, this is what you guys are seeing, but this is from a leadership perspective, right? On how you can become a better leader in this area. And by the time we got done with that conversation and the presentation and the interaction, they finally warmed up to me. But I just was like, you know what? No, this does apply. So I just think that there's a lot of, there's just a lot of opportunity for us to do it better.
yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And this is, as you said, it's not necessarily just about, helping people and, holding space for people who are going through a divorce. This is like, it's kind of all over the place. Cause like I said, challenges, especially with everything that we've been navigating globally, economically, I mean, you name it, like just even the changes that businesses are going through. It's like being able to be a leader that holds the space to help to be there for people. And it's, I mean, that's what's needed. And I think, again, being someone, and I went through my divorce at a very young age. I was 22. So, I mean, I was married and divorced, actually 23. I was married and divorced by the time I was 23. And back in those days, back in the day, in the dark ages, it was, I mean, there was no empathy, especially for somebody who was on the younger side. There was no empathy. There was no like help. There was no, it was, you needed to make up your time and you couldn't take too much time, to go talk to the divorce lawyer, and you couldn't take 5 minutes in the conference room just to talk to a divorce
Mhm.
lawyer. And even back then, my divorce lawyer was no help, and it was it and I'll go back to what I said in the beginning of this episode, like having someone who can be your trusted advisor, having someone who can be an advocate for you, be the voice when you can't quite find yours,
Mhm.
is, I can't tell you how life-changing that is. And you know, and it's one of the reasons why um I do what I do. is to really break that mold of leadership. Leadership is it's has nothing to do with the power, it has nothing to do with the title. It's all about how you show up. How you lead yourself so that you can, be a guide, be a mentor, just be somebody that cares.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of times it's, just being an ambassador for the well-being of people, right? So
Mhm.
like I surveyed. So anytime I'm getting ready to do something or I want to explore something, I always either start with a focus group or interview my clients or survey that. I always want feedback, right? So kind of along this lines, I'm like, okay, I reached out to my clients and I said, hey, I got a question for you. I said, for those of you who are working, what are your expectations as far as, you know, the for companies to be providing resources for you, right? And what I meant by that was, right, and I said, are you expecting your employer to pay for you to go through things like my divorce empowerment program, right? And none of them said yes. They all said,
Mhm.
I am not expecting them to pay. What I'm expecting them to do is give me the opportunity to maybe take a little bit longer of a lunch hour so I can focus on what I need to focus on and to be able to show up in the best way possible. Maybe it's a little flexibility on scheduling if they need to leave a little early because now they're kind of moving in the direction of single parenting. But at the end of the day, they were not looking for their company to pay for them to engage in these services. They
Hmm.
were looking for flexibility, understanding, empathy, and like you said, a safe space. Because a lot of the women that I work with, they already feel bad enough about the fact that they're going through this. And it is hard for them to have that conversation. And they don't necessarily feel safe. They're afraid that if they talk, they're going to lose their job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not good.
No, not at all. Not at all. And it that really speaks to it really speaks to the culture that is that develops in these, in different organizations. And I think part of the shift that needs to happen is within an organization. Culture's dynamic. As people change in the organization, as the leadership is growing, as different things that are happening, it's constantly going to be ebbing and flowing. But the thing that can remain the same is how you end up regulating emotion, and how you can help the team to kind of regulate what's happening so that the culture stays healthy. No matter if things are thriving, people are thriving, the business is thriving, whatever, or if it's going through a lot of challenges. And when the culture is healthy, that's how it can be supportive to people in the organization. And I think people now, since the pandemic, I think people care more about quality of life. They care more about being supported than they necessarily do about getting raises and bonuses.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. It definitely shifted, right? Our priorities, it shifted what's important to us, and unfortunately, right? I mean, divorce rates have not plummeted. In fact, they've stayed steady and they went
Yeah.
through the roof during the pandemic because people realized, oh my gosh, I can't be in this situation. But it's one of those things where, while they may have gone down a little bit because people are not getting married as much, there's just so much around this that I think, we can do a better job of leaning into, the conversation and,
Definitely.
and helping people where we can help them. And so, yeah, just really really thankful for the opportunity to have this conversation because I think it's been something that has been on my heart and mind, and we've been doing this long enough where it's like, okay, it's really time now to step into, you know, getting even more structure, I guess you could say, around these conversations and just empowering
Mhm.
people to just show up in an even better way.
Yeah. And not being, I mean, you're right. We need to be okay having more of these conversations, and really, being a voice and speaking up for it, speaking up for the changes that need to happen in organizations, and being there to support people who need it, for sure. So let me ask you a question. Um, What would be, and I love what you said about being an ambassador for the well-being of people. I love that. That really stuck out to me because I just think just as a society in general, I think that we just need to be that for each other. I remember during the pandemic, Lester Holt used to always say when he was closing out the the nightly show, he would say, "Let's all take care of each other just a little bit more than we already do."
Mm.
And when you said that, it just reminded me of that statement because I mean, I love it. I love it. And I think, you know, I don't care who you are, whether you are a CEO or you are somebody who coaches a team or like you have the ability to be a leader that makes an impact simply by being an ambassador for the well-being of others. I think that's huge. Um, so if you were to give, as we kind of round out this episode, if you were to give people three things that they could do if they find themselves in a situation where they're trying to navigate through a divorce and they're trying to figure out their finances or they're trying to figure out like how to deal with their employer, like what would be three tips that you would give someone who's listening to this episode?
Yeah, I mean, so certainly love my podcast, right? We've got over 200 episodes. So Disrupting Divorce Conversations for Women is a great place for people to binge on all different types of topics related to the divorce process and empowerment around money.
Mhm.
I would also encourage people to just start being aware of the finances and what's going on. So for some people, that looks like, getting a better handle on what's coming in through the mail or starting to jot down expenses. If they don't have access to information, it's being hypersensitive on where they might be able to find that. So one of the things related to that could be, reaching out to the IRS to get IRS transcripts if they don't have access to tax returns, for example. And then really kind of along the lines of our conversation today is find that person
Mm.
that you can have that conversation with and somebody that you can be that can be that confidant for you. I know for a lot of my clients, right, I end up being that confident person where they don't feel like, hey, I'm too entwined with the organization. And so I can be that safe space for them and walk them through a methodology that's going to help them as they're navigating through the process. We call it our bridge method. And each of the letters for bridge stands for something. And it's intended to help them have a guideline on and a method as they're going through this. Because I think a lot of times people think, hey, I just have to call an attorney and that's my first step. But there are a lot of things that they can be doing under the radar, behind the scenes to get things in order and move in that direction if that's the direction that they want to go without having to, officially file. So
Mm.
it's getting stuff in order, as much as they possibly can.
Awesome. And what would be three tips that you would give a leader who's listening to this of how they can be a little bit more empathetic with their employees, especially someone who is navigating some kind of a life challenge?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think the first thing in my mind, Teresa, is it comes down to just being aware of a change in attitude, a change in behavior, a change in habits. You know what I mean? And just asking simple questions like, who are you today? Creating that space for people to be able to have that conversation. And lastly, be open to sharing resources with them. A lot of times companies have EAP organizations or things like that, and that certainly can be helpful for the mental health component and things like that. But we have a Bridge by Bridge program, which is 6 months, and we take women through step by step in a real curated way to get them moving in the right direction, make sure they've got the right team of people. And I would love to be a resource, right? I mean, if there are companies that are like, Rhonda, this message is really resonating with us. We're pretty forward thinking and we want to be able to, better help our clients, certainly happy to be a resource for them as well.
Awesome. Awesome. I love this. This has been an amazing conversation. I took a lot of notes. So I was just jotting down some notes. Some people are like, are you looking at something? And I'm like, no, I'm just writing. Just writing. I'm getting old. I need to write a note down so I can remember what I wanted to say. So I just have one more question before we close out this show. What is what does the future look like for Rhonda? Like, what are you working towards? What's your big thing that you're working towards, that mission that you have? Like, what does that look like?
Oh, I love this question. So there's a couple things. I mean, I think the main thing is we're really working toward continuing to be the thought leader in this space, challenging the status quo, being known as the divorce financial advocate for women, and we're well on our way to be able to do that. And then we're getting ready to launch another area of the business, and I can't quite talk about it yet, but we will be releasing that hopefully in the next couple weeks. And I want to be on the Today Show. So we're working towards some television exposure as well on some of the things we're doing and the paradigms that we're challenging. And that's not meant to be a threatening way. It's meant to be, hey, how can we be doing this better and more efficiently? And again, just really focused on helping people, being an ambassador, right, for the well-being of people. And I just love that. So yeah, getting this, what I would say small town girl, right, from a small town in Wisconsin, is working with some of the largest firms across the country, and love being able to help women.
Love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know anybody who's listening to this episode is going to get so much benefit out of this, and just there's been so many insights and, gold nuggets. So I so appreciate you sharing all of this with everyone. How can people find you out on the interweb?
Yeah. So my website is wfwcdivorce.com. Tons of free resources there. They can get a link to the podcast, blog, book, all the things. And then I'm on Instagram at Rhonda Noordyk.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an honor to chat with you, and it's good to see you again. Besides just, messages on LinkedIn and Instagram and stuff. But for everybody who has been listening, thank you for joining us every week. We are actually at episode 302 now. So we're moving towards 400. So we're just going to keep on going. And thank you for joining me every week. And I'm going to take Lester Holt's comment. Let's all take care of each other just a little bit more than we already do. So have a great rest of your week, everybody. And we will see you soon. Hey there. Thank you so much for listening. If you found value on this show, please follow the podcast so you never, ever miss an episode. And I would love, love, love if you would leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify for me. Even better, share the show with a fellow business owner ready to step fully into their CEO leadership role. Because right now, more than ever, the world really needs next level leaders. And by the way, did you know you can text me all your questions and get real-time feedback? You absolutely can. Just text the word CEO to me at 610-215-2838 to get connected. One last goodie for you before I go. If you're ready to scale your business and have a co-creator working right by your side, my C-Suite Mentor Program may be perfect for you and your possible new second in command. Just visit thecsuitementor.com to get started.